They say that every species has a breaking point, a moment when survival instinct overrides all reason, all mercy, all civilization. I've served alongside warriors from 1,000 worlds, witnessed the calculated brutality of the HFY death squads, and seen the methodical efficiency of Zephyrian battle fleets reduce entire systems to cosmic dust. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day I watched humanity cross that line. My name is Veltar Nix, former intelligence operative for the Galactic Confederation, and for 37 cycles, I believed I understood the nature of war. I thought I had seen the worst that sentient beings could inflict upon each other. I was wrong. Catastrophically, terrifyingly wrong. The humans had been our newest allies, barely 2 decades into their membership in the Confederation. They seemed soft, emotional creatures who formed attachments to their companions, who mourned their dead with elaborate rituals, who hesitated before pulling triggers. The other species mocked them quietly in council chambers. The crying apes, some called them. Too weak for the real fights ahead. We should have paid closer attention to their history, because when the Void Hunters came for their homeworld, when they threatened to harvest every human soul for their twisted experiments, something ancient and primal awakened in our soft allies, something that had been sleeping beneath their smiles and diplomatic pleasantries, something that made me realize why their own legends were filled with monsters, and why those monsters always looked like them. I was there. I saw it all. And even now, as I record this testimony in the safety of my retirement pod on Kepler Station, my appendages still shake when I remember the look in their eyes when they finally, truly, got angry. This is my account of the day humanity reminded the galaxy why apex predators don't always have the biggest teeth. Sometimes, they just have the deepest fury. The morning of what would become known as the Terror Crisis began like any other aboard the Confederation flagship, Eternal Vigilance. Veltar Nix stretched his forearms in the zero-gravity sleep pod, his crystalline skin catching the soft blue light of the ship's artificial dawn cycle. As the intelligence chief for Sector 7, he had grown accustomed to the steady hum of the massive vessel's engines and the quiet bustle of a crew from 17 different worlds working in harmony. The humans called it their coffee hour, though the bitter liquid they consumed bore no resemblance to anything civilized species would consider palatable. Veltar had learned to appreciate these small rituals that different races brought aboard the ship. The Altarians sang their morning harmonies. The HFY performed their silent meditation kata. And the humans gathered around their brewing stations, sharing stories and laughter that seemed to echo through the corridors with infectious warmth. "Morning, Vel," called out Commander Sarah Chen, the human liaison officer assigned to the intelligence division. Her species had a peculiar habit of shortening names, which had initially offended Veltar's formal Zephyrian sensibilities. Now, after 3 years serving together, he found the informality oddly comforting. "Good cycle, Commander Chen." Veltar's translator rendered his crystalline voice tones into something approximating human speech patterns. The night reports show unusual readings from the outer rim sensors. Sarah's expression shifted subtly, another human trait Veltar had learned to read. Where other species displayed emotions through obvious physical changes, humans revealed their thoughts through minute alterations in facial muscle tension. Her eyebrows drew together by perhaps 2 millimeters, and the corners of her mouth tightened almost imperceptibly. "What kind of unusual?" she asked, setting down her coffee cup with deliberate care. "Mass displacement signatures. Large ones. The computer estimates at least 300 vessels, possibly more." Veltar accessed his datapad with a gesture, the holographic display materializing between them. "They appeared at the edge of sensor range approximately 4 hours ago and have been moving toward the inner systems at sublight speeds." Sarah studied the display, her fingers drumming against her thigh in a rapid pattern another human tell Veltar had catalogued. It meant she was thinking quickly, processing multiple scenarios simultaneously. This particular behavioral quirk had impressed him during their first joint mission. Humans might not possess the raw computational power of synthetic species or the hive mind efficiency of collective consciousness races, but their individual pattern recognition capabilities were remarkably sophisticated. "Have we attempted communication?" Sarah asked. "Standard hails have been broadcast on all frequencies." No response. Veltar manipulated the hologram, zooming in on the mysterious fleet. "The vessels don't match any known Confederation designs, nor do they correspond to any registered civilian or military configurations in our databases. Pirates? Unlikely. The formation patterns suggest military organization, and the energy signatures are significant. Each vessel appears to be generating power levels consistent with Dreadnought-class warships." Sarah's face went pale. a human physiological response to sudden stress that Veltar had always found fascinating. Most species' fear responses involve defensive coloration or aggressive displays, but humans seem to drain of color, as if their bodies were redirecting resources to more critical systems. 300 dreadnoughts, she whispered. That's more firepower than the entire Confederation fleet. Admiral HFY has called an emergency session of the Command Council. Veltar paused, studying his colleague's face. Your species has an expression about the calm before the storm, does it not? Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes still fixed on a holographic display. Yeah, we do. And Vel? I think our storm just arrived. The command deck of the Eternal Vigilance buzzed with controlled tension. Representatives from 12 species sat around the circular council table, their various communication devices creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, harmonics, and electromagnetic pulses that the ship's universal translator worked overtime to convert into coherent dialogue. Admiral HFY, a massive Gornathian whose rocky hide bore the scars of countless battles, dominated the head of the table. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strongest survived, and their military traditions stretched back millennia. If the Admiral was concerned, Veltar knew the situation was dire. The unknown fleet has accelerated, announced Lieutenant Zodak, the ship's tactical officer. His insectoid features remained impassive, but his mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation among his people. Current velocity suggests they will reach the Sol system within 18 standard hours. Sol system, repeated Commander Thrix, the Altarian strategic analyst. Her melodious voice carried harmonics of distress. That's the human homeworld. All eyes turned to Sarah, who sat straighter in her chair. Veltar had observed this response in humans before. When faced with threats to their group, they seemed to undergo a subtle but noticeable physical transformation. Her posture became more rigid, her breathing deeper and more controlled. Her hands, which had been resting casually on the table, now gripped the edge with white knuckles. Earth, she said simply. 4 billion people. We've sent reconnaissance drones ahead, Admiral HFY rumbled, his deep voice causing the table's surface to vibrate slightly. Initial reports are disturbing. The unknown vessels appear to be equipped with technology we don't recognize. Energy weapons of unknown configuration, shielding that deflects our scanner attempts, and most concerning, biological components.
Biological components? Biological? Sarah's voice carried a note Veltar had never heard before.
It was still recognizably her vocal pattern, but something underneath had changed. Something harder. The ships appear to be partially organic in nature. Living vessels, if our readings are correct. The Admiral manipulated his own holographic display showing enhanced images of the approaching fleet. The configuration suggests they may be harvesting vessels. The word hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every species in the galaxy had legends of the harvesters, ancient beings that swept through systems, collecting biological material for purposes too terrible to contemplate. Most civilizations considered them myths, cautionary tales told to children. But the evidence floating in the hologram suggested otherwise. Void hunters, whispered Dr. Murtak, the expedition's xenobiologist. Her amphibian features had turned a sickly yellow-green. The old texts speak of them. Ships that live and breathe, creatures that harvest sentient minds for sustenance. Sarah stood abruptly, her chair sliding back with a screech that cut through the translated conversations. Every being in the room turned to look at her, and Veltar felt a chill run down his spine at what he saw in her expression.
"Request permission to contact Earth, Admiral," she said, her voice perfectly steady.
Granted, Commander, though I should warn you, evacuation of 4 billion individuals is logistically impossible in 18 hours. I'm not calling about evacuation, sir. Sarah's smile was unlike any expression Veltar had seen from her before. It was sharp, predatory, and completely devoid of the warmth he had come to associate with human facial expressions. I'm calling about preparation. The holographic communication array flickered to life, displaying the image of a stern-faced human in military uniform. General Morrison, according to the identification tags, commanding officer of Earth's Planetary Defense Force. His weathered features and grey hair spoke of long experience, and when his eyes met Sarah's through the quantum-entangled connection, Veltar sensed an immediate understanding pass between them. Sarah, the general said simply. We've been monitoring the situation. 18 hours? Confirmed, General. 300-plus vessels. Unknown technology. probable Void Hunter configuration. Morrison's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. Veltar noticed that other humans in the background of the transmission had stopped their activities and were turning toward the conversation. Their body language spoke of sudden, intense focus. "Rules of engagement?" Morrison asked. "Unknown hostiles approaching Earth space with apparent intent to harvest the population," Sarah replied formally. "I think that falls under Protocol 7. Veltar frowned, accessing his database of human military procedures. Protocol 7 wasn't listed in any of the standard Confederation files. He made a note to research this later, though something about the tone of the conversation made his crystalline skin feel uncomfortably cold. Acknowledged. We'll begin implementation immediately. Morrison paused, and for just a moment his professional mask slipped. Underneath, Veltar glimpsed something that reminded him of the predators from his homeworld, the great crystal stalkers that hunted in the deep caves, patient and utterly ruthless. "Sarah, tell the Admiral that Earth appreciates the Confederation's concern, but we'll handle this internally."
General, these aren't pirates or raiders.
Our analysis suggests they're significantly more advanced than standard Confederation technology. Perhaps a coordinated response. Negative, Commander? This is Earth business now. Morrison's image leaned forward slightly. But Sarah, you might want to keep your friends back. Way back. What comes next? Well, let's just say it gets messy. The transmission ended, leaving the Command Council in uncomfortable silence. Admiral Kexhigh's rocky features showed deep concern, while several other officers exchanged worried glances. "Commander Chen," the Admiral said slowly, "what exactly is Protocol 7? Sarah had returned to her seat, but her posture remained rigid. When she spoke, her voice carried an edge that made Veltar's translator struggle with the emotional undertones. "It's an old protocol, sir. Pre-Confederation. From back when humanity had to fight alone." She met the Admiral's gaze steadily. "It's what we do when someone threatens our home. And what exactly does it entail?" Sarah's smile returned, that sharp, predatory expression that seemed so alien on her normally warm features. "I'm honestly not sure, Admiral. Protocol 7 was classified above my clearance level, but I know who wrote it." "Who?" "The same people who fought the Unification Wars. The same people who survived the colony massacres. The same people who turned Mars from a barren rock into a fortress world in less than a decade." Sarah's eyes took on a distant look. "The same people who have never, in our entire recorded history, lost a defensive war on our home soil." Veltar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. In his years of intelligence work, he had learned to read between the lines of what people didn't say. And what Sarah wasn't saying spoke volumes about what was coming. "How should we proceed, Admiral?" asked Commander Thrix, her harmonics wavering with uncertainty. Admiral Kexhay studied the tactical display for a long moment. "We maintain position at the edge of the system. Long-range sensors only. If the humans require assistance, they won't," Sarah said quietly. "How can you be so certain, Commander?" Sarah stood again, moving toward the viewports that looked out into the star-filled darkness. In the distance, barely visible even with enhanced sensors, the approaching fleet continued its inexorable advance toward Earth. "Because, sir, you've never seen what happens when you threaten the human's family. And Earth?" She turned back to the assembled officers, and Veltar saw something in her eyes that made him glad humans were allies rather than enemies. "Earth is home to every human family that ever existed." As if summoned by her words, Lieutenant Zordak's scanner station began emitting urgent chimes. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the Sol system. Orbital stations, asteroid installations, even the lunar bases. Everything's powering up simultaneously." "Defensive preparations?" the Admiral asked. "No, sir," Zordak replied, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "If I didn't know better, I'd say they were preparing for an offensive operation." Sarah nodded slowly. "Protocol 7 isn't about defense, Admiral. It's about making sure that anyone who threatens Earth understands they've made their last mistake." In the depths of space, the Void Hunter fleet continued its approach, unaware that they had awakened something that had been sleeping for barely 2 decades. Something that the galaxy had forgotten could be so dangerous because it had been hiding behind smiles and diplomatic courtesy and offers of friendship. Something that was about to remind the universe why apex predators were called apex predators. The last words on the command deck, whispered by Sarah as she stared into the darkness, were barely audible through the translator. God help us all, and God help them. The first sign that something fundamental had changed came 6 hours after the transmission from Earth. Veltar was in his quarters attempting to research Protocol 7 through back channels in classified databases when his communication system erupted in urgent alerts. The quantum-encrypted priority channel reserved for Confederation intelligence was broadcasting a message that made his crystalline heart skip several beats. All vessels are to maintain minimum safe distance from Sol system. Repeat. All vessels maintain minimum safe distance. This is not a drill. This is not a request. Veltar rushed to the command deck, arriving to find the council chamber in barely controlled chaos. Admiral Kexajehe stood before the main tactical display, his rocky features etched with something approaching awe and terror in equal measure. "Commander Chen," he called out as Veltar approached. "Perhaps you can explain this." The holographic display showed the Sol system in three-dimensional detail, but what Veltar saw defied everything he understood about defensive strategy. The entire system had transformed into something that looked less like a star system and more like a vast mechanical organism preparing to strike. Every asteroid in the belt had sprouted weapons arrays. Every satellite orbiting the inner planets now bristled with energy projectors and missile batteries. The moon itself seemed to have opened like a flower, revealing massive installations that had been hidden beneath its surface for decades. Mars, which Veltar had visited during a diplomatic mission and remembered as a terraforming project with scattered research stations, now revealed itself to be a fortress world with enough firepower to sterilize several systems.
How is this possible? Doctor?
Merthak whispered, her amphibian features pale with shock. "We've conducted regular surveys of human space. These installations, they should have been visible."
They were, Sarah said quietly, studying the display with an expression Veltar couldn't decipher. "We just didn't know what we were looking at." "Explain. Every mining operation in the asteroid belt."
Every terraforming station on Mars, every deep space research facility, every communications satellite around Earth. Sarah gestured at the hologram, where thousands of previously innocent installations now showed their true nature. They were all dual-purpose, hidden in plain sight. Lieutenant Zordak's scanner station chirped urgently. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive troop movements throughout the system. Ships launching from every planet, every station, every hidden base." His mandibles clicked so rapidly they became a blur. "Sir, the energy readings suggest the humans have been building a military force at least 10 times larger than what they've reported to the Confederation." 10 times? Admiral Keksai's voice rumbled with disbelief. "That would make them the largest military power in known space." "Not the largest, sir," Sarah corrected, her voice carrying a note of grim pride. "The largest that anyone knew about." Veltar felt his understanding of the universe shift fundamentally. The humans, the emotional, soft, peace-loving humans, who hesitated before violence and mourned their enemies, had been systematically deceiving every major power in the galaxy for over 2 decades. Not through lies, but through carefully constructed misdirection and the galaxy's own assumptions about what constituted normal behavior. "Why?" he heard himself ask. "Why hide this level of capability?" Sarah turned to him, and for a moment, her professional mask slipped completely. Underneath, he saw something ancient and tired, as if she carried the weight of her entire species' history in her expression. "Because, Vel, the last time humanity went to war without limits, we nearly destroyed ourselves. The Unification Wars killed 2 billion people and left half our planet uninhabitable. We swore it would never happen again." She paused, watching as the tactical display updated with new energy signatures appearing throughout the system. "But we also swore that no one would ever threaten our home again. So we built all of this, and we hid it, and we hoped we'd never need to use it. And now? Now someone's threatening to harvest 4 billion human souls," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. "And they're about to discover why we spent 3 centuries learning to be better at war than anyone else in the galaxy." The Void Hunter fleet had entered the outer edge of the Sol system, their organic ships moving with the confident predatory grace of apex hunters approaching helpless prey. Veltar watched through the long-range sensors as the alien vessels spread into attack formations, their living hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that suggested excitement, anticipation, hunger. They had no way of knowing they had just entered the most sophisticated killing field in known space. The attack began without warning, without communication, without the courtesy of a final surrender demand. The Void Hunters simply opened fire on the nearest human installation, a small mining platform on the outermost asteroid. expecting to vaporize it as a demonstration of their superior firepower. The mining platform absorbed the energy blast completely, its hull glowing briefly before returning to its normal appearance. Then it fired back. The return volley erased 3 Void Hunter ships from existence in a single coherent beam of energy that made Veltar's sensors overload trying to measure its power output. The remaining alien vessels hesitated, confusion rippling through their formation like a wave. That moment of confusion cost them dearly. Every asteroid in the belt opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Void Hunter fleet filled with energy beams, projectile streams, and exotic weapons that Veltar's sensors couldn't even identify. The aliens' organic shields, which had seemed so impressive during their approach, were stripped away in seconds. Their living hulls, evolved over millennia to resist conventional weapons, began to dissolve under the assault of weapons technologies that shouldn't have existed.
"By the ancient crystals," Veltar breathed,
His voice translator struggling with the emotional overtones. How many weapons platforms do they have? Every asteroid with sufficient mass to hide the installations, Sarah replied, her eyes fixed on the tactical display with frightening intensity. We've been building this defensive grid for 70 years. Every mining operation, every survey mission, every scientific expedition, they all left something behind. The Void Hunter fleet tried to retreat, but they quickly discovered that the asteroid belt was only the outer layer of humanity's defensive preparations. As they fell back toward the inner system, Mars revealed its true nature. The red planet's surface erupted with launch bays, weapon emplacements, and energy projectors that had been masquerading as terraforming equipment for decades. Massive rail guns, buried beneath the Martian surface, began hurling projectiles the size of small buildings at relativistic velocities. Each shot carried enough kinetic energy to crack a moon, and they fired in volleys that turned the space between Mars and the asteroid belt into a lethal corridor of metal and energy. "This is impossible," Admiral Kexahai muttered, his rocky features showing deep fractures of stress. "The power requirements alone, where are they getting the energy for all of this?" Sarah's smile was sharp and cold. "Have you ever wondered why humans were so interested in stellar engineering projects? All those research stations around our sun, all those experimental fusion reactors on our outer planets." She gestured at the display, where new energy signatures were appearing near the solar corona. "We've been turning our entire star into a power source." The battle, if it could even be called a battle, continued for 3 hours. The Void Hunters, despite their advanced biotechnology and centuries of successful harvesting campaigns, found themselves systematically dismantled by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Every tactical advantage they possessed was countered by weapons they couldn't understand, strategies they couldn't predict, and a level of coordination that suggested the entire human military had been preparing for this exact scenario. But it was what happened next that truly horrified Veltar and made him understand why Sarah had warned them to stay back. The surviving Void Hunter vessels, perhaps 24 out of their original 300, managed to break through the outer defenses and approach Earth itself. Their desperation was palpable through the scanner readings. These were beings who had never known defeat, never encountered prey that could fight back effectively. They threw everything they had at the blue-green world that had spawned their tormentors. Earth's defenses activated. The planet's surface erupted in light as hidden installations revealed themselves. The moon, which Veltar now realized was more weapon than natural satellite, unleashed energies that made the asteroid belt's firepower look like children's toys. Orbital platforms that had been disguised as space elevators and research stations deployed weapon systems that carved through space itself. But the most terrifying moment came when the Void Hunters, in their desperation, attempted to use their most feared tactic. Their remaining ships began to merge, their organic hulls flowing together like living mercury, combining into a single massive creature designed to devour planets whole. That was when humanity stopped playing defense and revealed what they had really been building for the past 70 years. The space around Earth filled with ships. Not hundreds, not thousands, but tens of thousands of vessels that emerged from hidden bases, cloaked positions, and camouflaged installations throughout the system. They moved with perfect coordination, their formations flowing like schools of metallic fish, surrounding the merged Void Hunter creature with mathematical precision. "Fleet strength assessment," Admiral Kexai demanded, his voice cracking slightly. "Sir," Lieutenant Zordak replied, his mandibles trembling. "I'm reading over 40,000 individual vessels, from fightercraft to dreadnoughts to ship classifications I don't recognize. Energy signatures suggest combined firepower equivalent to..." Sir, equivalent to the total military force of the entire Confederation. One system, Doctor. Murthak whispered. One star system has been hiding a fleet larger than our entire alliance. But even that wasn't the end of humanity's revelations. As the massive human fleet surrounded the merged Void Hunter creature, Sarah stepped forward and activated her personal communication system. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Confederation vessel Eternal Vigilance to Fleet Command, requesting permission to observe the conclusion of defensive operations. The response came immediately, in a voice that carried the weight of absolute authority. Permission granted, Commander. Stand by for demonstration of Protocol 7 final phase. Velta felt his crystalline structure resonate with dread. Final phase? Sarah's expression was unlike anything he had ever seen on a human face. It combined grief, determination, and something that might have been regret. The Void Hunters made one critical error in their intelligence gathering, Bell. They assumed that because we're social creatures who form emotional attachments, we would be vulnerable to psychological warfare. And you're not? Oh, we are. Threaten a single human child, and you'll see emotional responses that compromise tactical efficiency. Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. But threaten all human children simultaneously, threaten the entire species, threaten to harvest our homeworld. She shook her head slowly. That doesn't make us emotional, Vel. That makes us something else entirely. The human fleet opened fire. But this wasn't the precise tactical engagement they had witnessed in the outer system. This was something primal and absolute. Every weapon in the human arsenal discharged simultaneously, turning the space around the merged Void Hunter creature into a maelstrom of energy that overloaded every sensor on the Eternal Vigilance. When the interference cleared, the creature was gone. Not destroyed, gone. Erased so completely that there wasn't even debris. By the void, Admiral Kixhay breathed. What weapons could possibly... Not weapons, Sarah interrupted. Weapon. Singular. That wasn't 40,000 ships firing independently. That was one massive weapon system distributed across 40,000 platforms. The implications hit Veltar like a physical blow. The entire fleet is a single weapon? The entire system is a single weapon, Sarah corrected. Every installation, every ship, every platform. All connected, all coordinated, all designed for one purpose, to ensure that nothing threatening Earth ever leaves this system alive. Lieutenant Zordak's scanners were working frantically to process what they had just witnessed. Commander Chen, I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with, this is impossible. Vacuum manipulation? Reality distortion? Sir, I don't think they destroyed that creature. I think they unmade it, removed it from existence entirely. Sarah nodded grimly. Protocol 7 isn't just about fighting back. It's about making sure that anyone who threatens humanity understands that extinction is preferable to whatever we'll do to them if they force us to get creative. The command deck fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans, the supposedly soft, emotional, peace-loving humans, had built a defense system so advanced, so completely hidden, and so utterly devastating that they could erase entire fleets from reality itself. And they had been sitting at diplomatic tables for 20 years, smiling and making friends and signing peace treaties, all while possessing the capability to annihilate any civilization in known space. Why are you telling us this? Veltar asked finally. Sarah turned to face the assembled officers, and her expression softened slightly, returning to something resembling the colleague he had known for 3 years. Because now that it's over, we can go back to pretending we're just another member species of the Confederation. We can return to our peaceful exploration and diplomatic missions and cultural exchanges. She paused, looking out at the Sol system where the massive human fleet was already beginning to disperse back to their hidden bases. But everyone needs to understand that this, all of this, is what happens when someone threatens our home. And Val? Yes. Commander? This wasn't even close to our full capability. This was just the local defense force. 3 days after the Void Hunter fleet ceased to exist, Veltar found himself in the strangest position of his intelligence career, trying to understand a species that had fundamentally rewritten his conception of power in the galaxy. The Eternal Vigilance remained at the edge of the Sol system, its crew still processing what they had witnessed, while reports flooded in from Confederation worlds that had monitored the engagement through long-range sensors.
The official human response to the crisis had been filed with Confederation Command within 12 hours. Hostile force neutralized.
No Confederation assistance required. Resuming normal operations. as if they had dealt with a minor pirate raid rather than the most advanced military threat the galaxy had seen in millennia. Sarah found him in his quarters, staring at intelligence reports that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of just how thoroughly humanity had been preparing for this day. "You look like someone who's discovered his reality was built on quicksand," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk with 2 cups of that bitter liquid humans called coffee.
"An apt metaphor," Veltar replied, accepting the offered beverage despite knowing he couldn't properly metabolize it.
The ritual had become important to him over their years of collaboration. "I've been reviewing intelligence files from the past 20 years. Every human expansion, every colony ship, every trade mission. And what have you found? Strategic positioning. Every human colony is located at a choke point between major trade routes or near critical resource deposits. Every trade mission visited systems that would later become vital to Confederation defense networks. Every exploration vessel surveyed regions that just happened to contain perfect staging areas for military operations." Sarah sipped her coffee, her expression carefully neutral. "Humans are naturally curious about the galaxy. We like to explore." "Commander Chen?" Veltar said slowly, "In my professional opinion, humanity has spent the past 2 decades conducting the most comprehensive intelligence gathering and strategic positioning operation in recorded history. You haven't just been exploring the galaxy, you've been mapping it for conquest." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Sarah set down her cup and leaned back in her chair, studying Veltar's crystalline features with the sort of analytical intensity he had come to associate with human tactical planning.
What do you want to know, Vel?
She asked finally. "The truth, all of it, because what I witnessed 3 days ago wasn't just a defensive action, it was a demonstration. A very carefully calibrated demonstration designed to send a specific message to anyone watching." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her eyes focused on something beyond the viewport where Earth hung like a blue jewel in the darkness. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that suggested she was sharing secrets that could reshape the galaxy. "Do you know what humanity's greatest fear was when we first encountered the Confederation, Vel?
That you would be seen as primitive.
Technologically inferior? No, our greatest fear was that we would be seen as we actually are." Sarah turned to meet his gaze directly. "Do you know what the average human military strategist considers an acceptable casualty ratio in defensive operations?" Veltar accessed his database of Confederation military doctrine. Most civilized species consider 10 to 1 an excellent exchange rate. 20 to 1 would be considered a crushing victory. The average human considers 1 to 1 an acceptable starting point. 10 to 1 is what we call getting warmed up. And when someone threatens our homeworld, Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. "We don't consider any ratio acceptable unless it approaches mathematical infinity. Total annihilation of the threatening force with 0 friendly casualties is our baseline expectation." End of context by Joe K. Partist. Yes, it is. Sarah didn't flinch from the assessment. But it's also why humans have never lost a war when our survival was at stake. When you threaten a human community, you're not just fighting soldiers, you're fighting an entire civilization that has spent its whole evolutionary history learning to kill things that threaten the tribe. Veltar felt his crystalline structure shiver. The Sol System Defense Grid. "How long have you been building it?" Construction began the day after first contact with the Confederation. Every human vessel that left our system carried components, plans, or personnel for Project Halfguard. Every colony established maintained a secondary mission as a forward observation post or supply depot. Every diplomatic mission gathered intelligence on potential threats and strategic vulnerabilities. "You've been planning for war since the day you joined our Alliance for Peace?" "We've been planning to make sure war would be unnecessary," Sarah corrected. "The best way to avoid a fight is to make sure everyone understands that starting one would be the worst mistake they could possibly make." A priority alert chimed from Veltar's communication system, interrupting their conversation. Admiral Kexahai's voice filled the room with urgent harmonics. "All senior staff to the command deck immediately. Priority Alpha. Situation." They rushed through the corridors of the Eternal Vigilance, arriving to find the command deck in controlled chaos. The main tactical display showed a real-time map of known space, with dozens of red warning indicators flashing across multiple sectors. "Report," Admiral Kexhay demanded as they approached. Lieutenant Zordak's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed incoming data streams. "Sir, we're receiving surrender transmissions from 17 different hostile factions across the Outer Rim. The HFY hegemony has withdrawn all forces from disputed territories and is requesting immediate peace negotiations. The Razor Syndicate has ceased all pirate operations and is offering to disband entirely. The Hive Collective has opened their protected systems to Confederation inspection teams. Surrender transmissions? Veltar's translator struggled with the concept. We're not at war with any of those factions. No, sir, but apparently they all monitored our engagement with the Void Hunters. And, sir, Zordak hesitated, his insectoid features showing deep concern. They're all specifically requesting that humanity be excluded from any enforcement actions against their former territories. Admiral Kexahai's rocky features displayed the geological equivalent of shock. They're afraid of the humans. More than afraid, sir. I'm receiving communications that describe humanity as a galaxy-ending threat and an extinction-level civilization. Several factions are requesting permission to relocate to different galactic regions entirely. Sarah stepped forward, her expression grim. Admiral, I need to contact Earth Command immediately. This isn't what we intended. What did you intend, Commander? To send a message to aggressive species that Earth was off limits. We didn't mean to terrify the entire galaxy into submission. Admiral Kexhow studied the tactical display, where more surrender signals appeared every few minutes. Commander Chen, I need to ask you a direct question, and I need a complete answer. What exactly is humanity's true military capability? Sarah was quiet for so long that Veltar began to wonder if his translator had malfunctioned. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Admiral, what you saw 3 days ago was approximately 15% of our Sol System defense force. We have 73 colony worlds, each with similar defensive installations. We have deep space manufacturing facilities that could produce 10,000 warships per month if activated. We have weapons research programs that have developed technologies we don't even fully understand ourselves. She paused, her eyes reflecting something that might have been regret.
And all of that is just what we've built in the 20 years since joining the Confederation.
Just 20 years? Dr. Murthak's amphibian features had turned a sickly yellow-green.
What did you build before joining? Before joining, we spent 3 centuries learning to fight ourselves. Humans are the only species in known space that has fought extended wars against opponents with identical technology, identical intelligence, and identical tactical capabilities. We didn't just learn to fight, we learned to fight ourselves, which is considerably more difficult. Veltar felt the pieces clicking together in his mind like a crystalline puzzle achieving perfect alignment. The colony worlds, they're not colonies at all, are they? They're fortresses, Sarah confirmed. Every single human world outside Sol System is a military installation disguised as a civilian colony. Every trade route we've established is a supply line. Every cultural exchange program has been intelligence gathering. Every diplomatic mission has been terrain reconnaissance. For what purpose? Sarah's expression was unlike anything Veltar had ever seen on a human face. It combined resignation, determination, and something that might have been ancient sadness. Because we learned something during the Unification Wars that no other species has had to discover, Vel. We learned what happens when you fight an enemy that's exactly as smart, exactly as determined, and exactly as ruthless as you are. And the lesson we learned is this: the only way to guarantee your survival is to make sure you never have to fight that kind of war again.
By being more ruthless than any opponent you might face? By being so overwhelmingly superior in every aspect of warfare that potential enemies choose surrender over engagement?
Not because they can't win, but because they understand that even victory would cost them everything they value.
Admiral Kexahay was studying the surrender transmissions with growing concern. Commander, I'm reading requests for protection from 17 different factions. They're asking the Confederation to defend them from humanity. And? From humanity? Sarah's eyes widened. But we haven't threatened anyone. We've never made aggressive moves against any of these groups, undescribed. No, but you've demonstrated that you could eliminate them at will if you chose to. From their perspective, living in the same galaxy as humanity is like sharing a room with a sleeping tiger. The implications began to dawn on everyone present. Humanity's demonstration of defensive capability had achieved its goal of deterring aggression against Earth, but it had also revealed them as an existential threat to every other civilization in known space.
This is a problem, Sarah said quietly.
Indeed it is, Admiral Kexashai agreed. The Confederation was built on the principle of mutual cooperation between equals. But if one species possesses the capability to destroy all the others, the balance falls apart, Veltar finished. Either humanity becomes a tyrannical overlord, or the other species unite to destroy them before they can become one. Sarah activated her personal communication system. This is Commander Chen requesting priority contact with Earth Command. Authorization Omega-7. 7. General Morrison's image appeared in the hologram, but he was no longer alone. Behind him stood individuals in uniforms Veltar didn't recognize, bearing insignia that seemed to represent branches of human military organization that had never been mentioned in any Confederation briefing. Sarah, Morrison said grimly, we've been monitoring the situation. How bad is it? Sir, 17 factions have surrendered, without us even threatening them. More are requesting relocation to different galactic regions. We've terrified the entire galaxy into submission. Unintended consequences of Protocol 7, said one of the uniformed figures behind Morrison. We modeled this scenario during the planning phases, probability estimated at 37%. And your recommended response? Admiral Kexai inquired. The figure stepped forward, and Veltar noticed that her uniform bore no rank insignia, no identifying marks at all. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected billions of lives. The Tyrant's Dilemma Protocol, she said simply. If you possess the power to destroy everyone around you, you have three choices. Use that power to rule them, allow them to destroy you to protect themselves, or find a third option. Which is, become the protector instead of the threat. Use overwhelming force not to conquer, but to guarantee peace. Sarah's expression showed understanding.
The Confederation Guardian Protocol. Explain, Admiral Kexhay demanded.
The unnamed officer manipulated her own holographic display, showing a tactical map of known space with human positions highlighted in blue.
Every human installation, every colony, every hidden base becomes part of a galaxy-wide defense network. Any species that faces an existential threat can request human intervention. We become the ultimate guarantors of galactic peace, not through conquest, but through protection. And if a species threatens others, they face the choice of immediate withdrawal or the kind of demonstration the Void Hunters just received. Veltar studied the proposal with growing amazement. You're suggesting that humanity become the galaxy's police force. We're suggesting that humanity embrace the role we accidentally created for ourselves, the officer corrected. Every civilization in known space now understands that we possess galaxy-ending capabilities. We can't pretend otherwise, but we can choose how we use that knowledge. Admiral Kexai was quiet for several minutes, his rocky features showing the deep fractures that indicated intense thought among his species. This would require complete restructuring of the Confederation government. Humanity would hold ultimate veto power over all major decisions. Question 20. Is it here? Yes, Sarah admitted. It would. And I understand why that's terrifying to contemplate, P. But the alternative, the unnamed officer added, is either galactic tyranny or galactic war, and neither of those outcomes serves anyone's interests. Doctor, Murthak spoke up from her position near the science stations. What guarantees do we have that humanity won't abuse this power? The same guarantee you've had for the past 20 years, Sarah replied. The fact that we've possessed this capability all along and haven't used it. We could have conquered the galaxy at any point since joining the Confederation. Instead, we chose to hide our strength and work within the existing system until someone threatened your homeworld, Veltar pointed out. Yes, and that's the guarantee, Vel. We only fight when our survival is threatened, or when innocents are being slaughtered. Our entire military doctrine is built around protection, not conquest. Admiral Kexhai accessed his communication systems. I need to consult with the Confederation Council. This decision is too large for field commanders to make. Understood, Admiral. But while you're consulting, you should know that the offer comes with a deadline, which is 72 hours. After that, humanity begins implementing the Guardian Protocol unilaterally, with or without Confederation approval. The transmission ended, leaving the command deck in stunned silence. Veltar stared at Sarah, seeing his colleague and friend in an entirely new light. You planned this, he said finally. All of it, the demonstration, the galactic reaction, the Guardian Protocol proposal. This was the real purpose of Protocol 7. Sarah's smile was sad but genuine. We learned during our own wars that the only way to achieve lasting peace is to make the cost of conflict so high that nobody can afford it. But we also learned that power without responsibility leads to tyranny, and tyranny leads to rebellion, and rebellion leads to more war. So you engineered a situation where you would be forced to become the galaxy's protectors. We engineered a situation where we could choose to become protectors before circumstances forced us to become conquerors. Veltar was quiet for a long time, processing the implications of everything he had learned. The memory that haunts you. It's not the demonstration of humanity's power, it's the knowledge of what you're capable of, if that power is ever truly unleashed. The Void Hunters were lucky, Vel. They faced our defensive capabilities. They never got to see what we're like when we're actually trying to hurt someone. Sarah looked out at the stars, her expression distant. I've seen the classified simulations. I know what we've built in the deep black, in the spaces between stars where no one else goes. And I know what we could do to this galaxy if we ever decided that cooperation was impossible. And that's what haunts you. The knowledge that your species could become the very monsters you're trying to protect everyone from. Yes, because at the end of the day, Val, we're still human. We're still the species that fought the unification wars, that turned Mars into a fortress, that spent centuries learning to kill ourselves more efficiently than anyone else. Sarah turned to meet his gaze, and sometimes late at night, I wonder if we're saving the galaxy from the next Void Hunter invasion, or just making sure that when the galaxy finally faces its greatest threat, that threat will be wearing a human face. The Eternal Vigilance continued its orbit at the edge of the Sol system, waiting for the Confederation's response to humanity's ultimatum. And in his quarters, Veltar began writing his intelligence report, knowing that the words he chose would help determine whether the galaxy entered a new age of peace under human protection or began preparing for the war that would end everything. But as he wrote, one thought echoed through his crystalline mind. He had witnessed humanity's fury unleashed, and the memory would haunt him forever. Not because of what they had done to their enemies, but because of what they were still holding back. In the depths of space, hidden in places no other species had thought to look, the true strength of humanity waited in the darkness. Patient and terrible, and absolutely certain that it would never need to reveal itself. As long as everyone remembered the lesson of the Void Hunters, and chose wisdom over aggression, cooperation over conquest. As long as they remembered that some sleeping tigers should never be awakened. And as long as they understood that apex predators earned that title not through size or strength, but through their willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect what they loved. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see what humanity would choose to become. I witnessed humanity's fury unleashed, and the memory still haunts me. HFY sci-fi story.